Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel. Thanks so much for stopping by. So I've got a little bit of time tonight on this beautiful evening, and I thought I would just come down to a local beach and just talk a little bit about my OM1 and my Nikon Z8 after using both cameras side by side for 2 years. Now often people are reluctant to buy another system once they already own a Nikon or a Canon or a Fuji or a Sony. They're reluctant to buy another system to go alongside it because of the difference in the layout of the camera, the difference in the different functions that each setup has. And a lot of people think their muscle memory will get confused and two systems will make things too complicated. So they usually just stick with one. And I totally understand that, but sometimes different systems do definitely have different strong points, and I definitely feel that's the case with the OM1 and my Nikon Z8. So today I want to do a brief video and I'll briefly go through for which scenario I grab which camera, if that makes sense. So as I said, I've used both cameras alongside each other for 2 years now. Now I've had the OM1 for maybe, is it 3 or 4 years? A long time, since it first came out basically. And I've had the Nikon Z8 coming up for 2 years. And I was worried when I picked up the Nikon Z8 that it would supersede my OM1 and I would stop using my OM1, but that hasn't been the case. So yeah, this video is going to be a bit all over the place. I haven't scripted it, I'm just shooting from the hip, and in my case that usually ends up being drivel and waffle, but I'll try and keep to the point. Now on YouTube there are some videos of people who have tried out an OM1 and they're Nikon users, or they've tried out a Nikon and they're OM1 users, and they give you an opinion, but I think it's only from 2 or 3 weeks practice before they have to send the setup back. And I think they're probably not really in a position to give you a proper rundown of what each setup can do. And as I've used both extensively for 2 years, they are my setups, I bought them, these are the setups I choose. When I first got the Nikon, a lot of people asked me, are you going to stop using your OM1? And I never planned to do that. And as it turns out, I don't want to at the moment. I'm still really, really happy with it. And that's because I know each system's strengths and I use them when possible. Now, there are definitely times where I'm just quickly grabbing something and I just grab one system and I might be out and I think, oh, the other system might have been better here. And that's fine. But that would be even if you had this one system, you might pick up one lens and you think, oh, I wish I'd bought the other lens. So if you're just grabbing a small setup and you're packing light, you're always a chance that you might regret it later. So I'll tell you which genre of photography I usually use, which setup, and then I'll probably just add some photos at the end, which you may or may not have seen, depending on how often you watch the channel. So if I'm just going out for some regular bird photography, I usually grab my Nikon Z8. So as I've mentioned in the past, if I'm shooting close-up perched birds, small birds, or not so close large birds, and they're not moving, both systems are almost exactly the same. In fact, the OM1, the 50 frames a second can be really, really useful. And some of the other features like the Pro Capture on the OM1 can also be really, really useful. But if I think I'm just going to be doing regular birds in flight, for macro photography, I always pick up my OM1 and my 60mm 2.8. I think the OM1 setup with either the 60mm or the 90mm could be the best macro setup out there. A lot of macro photographers now seem to use it, and even my EM1 Mark II that I had before the OM1 works so well, that 60mm. The setup is so small, it's so easy to just hold the camera in one hand and hold an off-camera flash with your other hand. And the handheld in-camera focus stacking is such a great feature. Yes, you only get a JPEG, but I've got a lot of shots I'm really happy with. It works really well. I've got shaky hands and it's no problem. Also, the focus bracketing on the OM1 is really well, where you can just take a load of raw files, press the shutter button once after you've put all your different settings into the camera, and that will take up to 1,000 shots. You can then take it into your own editing software and edit it yourself. Yeah, so I just think the OM1 is almost the perfect macro camera. So if I'm doing macro, I'll choose the OM1. If I'm filming my kids either indoors at a school event, but I'm far away from the stage, or just at their football matches, I also choose the OM1. And that's totally because of the 40 to 150 fantastic plastic. I can't remember what the aperture is. It's a tiny lens, weighs nothing, and it doesn't stand out, you know, in the school gym filming video when they're up on stage. It's very inconspicuous. And also at the football, I don't want to turn up with my big lens saying, look at me. It's something small. Yes, the quality is not perfect, but it's good enough for taking 4K video of my kids playing football or doing something on the stage. So I usually take my OM1 where I'm filming my kids. As my kids get older, especially my youngest, and he's getting more serious with his football, if there was a big game and I felt it wouldn't be out of place for me to take my bigger lenses, I might then take the Nikon. But for now, I use my OM1 usually for all my kids' stuff. And that's even just going to the park because it's so small. I'll just take the OM1 and chuck 12 to 40 on it, which I love that lens. And that makes a really great setup. So usually kids, family stuff, I'm using the OM1. For travel photography, I did use the OM1, but I think if I travel somewhere now, I probably would take my Nikon and use it with the 24 to 70 f4 lens, which is super sharp, not too big, and I really like it. But both setups there would be absolutely fine. But yeah, I would probably take, so I'm going back to England in the summer, I'll take my Nikon, I'll take my 500mm, and I'll also take the 24 to 70. So yeah, when I'm traveling, if I'm going to do some street photography or some travel photography, I'll be using the Nikon because I'm taking the Nikon anyway, because that is my main choice for bird photography. And I'll be hoping to do some bird photography when I'm on my trip. When I'm shooting birds at night in the dark, so that might be owls or the Okinawan rail, which is a bird I often shoot here, they are way up in the trees at night and it's completely dark. Now, don't get into the ethics of that here, please. Sometimes people talk about you shouldn't use flash, you shouldn't use light. I try not to. I try and use a flashlight. I try and be as quick as possible, take some shots and then get out of there. And for those shots, I usually use the OM1 again because I'm always handheld and I just feel I can hold my 300mm with the OM1. It's so light. I can hold a torch in the other hand. I can shine it up to the tree, get a couple of shots, maybe use 1 or 2 flash shots and then bring it down. Don't have to worry about the tripod, and it's just quick and easy and I can get out. So yes, I could, if I took time to set up the tripod and I took longer, I'd probably use my Nikon. But usually when I take night shots of the Okinawan rail, I usually use my OM1. And the reason I also do that is I'm often taking shots of reptiles, then the Okinawan rail, reptiles, Okinawan rail, and I don't need to change the lens. I often shoot reptiles with my 300mm f4 because it's got such a close focusing distance and I can't be asked to change it to a macro lens all the time. So I can be shooting the rail up in the tree, maybe there's an owl, and maybe there's a small rodent or a small reptile or a frog or something, and I'll just use my 300mm. So happy with the shots it gets me for those smaller things. So in that situation, I use the OM1 again. So yeah, basically for those are the main types of photography that I do, and those are the systems that I choose. Now, both systems are fantastic. And when I just had my OM1 before I got the Nikon, I was so happy with it and I didn't miss anything else. But I'd already had Nikon glass from years ago, the 300mm 2.8 and the 500 5.6. And I knew that I wanted to use those again. When the Nikon Z8 came out, I made the decision to get that camera. And I was waiting for the right Nikon camera to buy so I could reunite with those lenses. And that's one of the things I love about the Nikon Z8 is you can use that amazing F-mount glass on those cameras. They almost perform better. You don't have to worry about aligning the lens with the camera because there's no mirror. So I think my 300mm 2.8, which recently I've been using a lot, just works flawlessly on that Z8. Now, yes, it's heavy, but I don't use it that much. But when I use it, I'm so happy with how the files look. It's so sharp. And I can't afford to go and buy some of the big expensive Z lenses. So I'm super happy with still using my 500mm PF and that 300mm 2.8 VR, the first one, which is about 25 years old now, but it's such a fantastic lens. Now, the OM1, I don't know whether you can adapt other lenses on it, but you wouldn't really want to do that, because the reason I want to put them on the Z8 is I want to use that 48 megapixel sensor. I want to get the most out of that glass. And I really have seen those two lenses shine on the Nikon Z8. So that's why I often choose the Nikon Z8. If I'm just doing photography just for an hour or two and I just grab one setup, I don't even use a bag, I just grab the camera and my 500mm 5.6 usually, and I love how the files look. So yeah, that's how I feel about both systems. I love my OM1, I love my Nikon Z8, and I will continue to keep using them. I don't usually have much of a problem now when you put the OM1 down, I pick up the Z8 and the difference in where the buttons are. And I think I've got used to that now. My muscle memory seems to be okay, so I don't find that too much of a problem. I know some people are worried about that, and that may be an issue for them, but I personally don't have a problem with it. And if one got broken tomorrow and I had to use the other one on its own for the next 2 or 3 months, it would be absolutely no problem. I love both of them. Of course, there are certain situations where, like for example, if I know that there's going to be a bird on a perch that's taking off, I know I'm going to use the OM1, because the pro capture on the OM1 is so much better than on the Nikon Z8. So yeah, they both have their strengths, but both of them on their own, brilliant setups. Together, I love them. And because neither are that big, I can actually take both setups if I'm going for a full day. My OM1 bag is so small, and then my Nikon bag is bigger, I can easily take both in the car. So I still enjoy using both setups. But if you're just starting or you want to get one and you've only got the money for one, then I would recommend either of them, whichever you can afford. They are both marvelous setups. And the reason I've got two is I started using Nikon over 10 years ago. So I've accumulated these over an amount of time. I don't buy a lot of lenses. Nearly everything I buy is used. And I can definitely give a huge thumbs up to both the Nikon and the OM1. So if you're thinking of either, go for either, whichever has the features. If you do more macro, maybe go for the OM1. If you use that pro capture all the time, maybe go for the OM1. If you want the ultimate detail on those birds in flight shots, maybe go for the Nikon Z8. Just going back to macro, I do have a macro lens for the Nikon Z8 and it does brilliantly. Macro lens is Sigma 150mm 2.8. It's big. So I can't really hold it one-handed, so it's just a bit more of an effort, but I do sometimes use it for macro. But yeah, anyway, I hope you found the video useful, and if you're worried about using two setups, don't be. It's definitely doable and manageable, and I really enjoy using both. Anyway, thanks so much for watching. Take care and bye from sunny Okinawa. Bye.